people's ability to synthesize information to knowledge
Yeah,
are
so
not always there.
there's a lot of information, but there's not enough understanding or interpretation of information.
Yeah.
So in essence, what you get is a small group of people who are able to interpret it, who can just give the answers that they like, in essence, which
Yeah, so they spin the way they want.
because of course a piece of data can be interpreted many ways and you can get multiple responses from it. Sure.
I wouldn't say all those people in power, this is doing that intentionally. They might be doing unintentionally because they believe in it so deeply for so long. And they would just say, okay, that's the truth. I think that it is, but that's okay. They have their own truth. But here is, if we can teach people how to identify different versions of truth of different person, or what are the common truth. I don't even know what common truth, or like real. I mean, facts more like a data is like, what are the general population or general people in different professional stage with think. So they can get a sense of different player in the society, how they would think about it. So that is why I want to get at this, for myself to get better, and to share experience this journey with others. So that's why I think this recording will help.
Yeah, and it's a noble pursuit to try and help people understand those things, and of course to grow. But yeah, I don't know. It just what we were talking about there kind of made me think of something I remembered from. Can't remember if they mentioned this in high school or in university, but they talk about how and at least I don't know if it's still the same, but when I was in high school physics classes, they would teach kind of Newtonian physics, which in a sense have been proven wrong because like Newton's theories were good at getting the right answer, but they weren't quite right. And they taught people that as a way of interpreting and just understanding it. And then once you get to university, they teach you general relativity and special relativity and things like that. And you end up just learning that what you were taught before is wrong. It gives you the right answer, but it's wrong. And it was an interesting way of interpreting data, right? Of teaching people, here is a way of coming to a conclusion that is essentially correct. It doesn't work in every instance, and it's technically an incorrect way of looking at the world, but this is a way of doing it. And it's almost reminiscent of something we were talking about. It just made me think of that. I know it's a little off topic, but it just made me think.
No, I think it's exactly, I think that's one of the key points of like an idea I say how far the data can go. And same with theory. Theory can go to certain distance and they will break down, and then you will need a new theory, and that's okay. That just means different theory cover different scale of time or space. So in the well-known example, like you said, the three laws of the force dynamic, they work really well on the scale of time and space we deal with in a day-to-day basis. It's even good enough to send satellite to the space to go to the moon. But it's not good enough when we want to synchronize the time of the satellite with our computer across the globe for years, right? That you need to account for general relativity. So this is scale of the things. So that again, go back to the range of error. So in this sense, Newton's law has a range of error that's really small that we thought is a law, and it is still a law to govern our day-to-day life. But that range of error, the small one, when they sum up through a large time scale, and they will create a huge error. Then our time wouldn't be synchronized. Then we need to use general relativity to fix this problem. So that is okay. That's a different temporal resolution. That's how we call it. It's a big jargon. It basically say a relative scale of a question you are looking at. For example, we look into a local scale, is this problem just our community, or is the problem of the whole universe? And there's almost no law can work in both scales. It's always a different set of laws.
Well, and that's kind of an issue the scientific, especially physics, runs into, is finding something that's useful at many different scales. So general and special relativity work at big scales, quantum mechanics work at small scales, but neither works at each other's scale.
Yeah. So that's the hot topic that they want to figure out. They cannot link. But I would say that's a very beautiful demonstration of how small error matter in some case, but not the other. Right? The small error of the force dynamic doesn't matter in our day-to-day life, for our driving, running, even flying doesn't matter. But when you synchronize time matters. So it's called a cumulative error rate.
Cumulative error rate.
Cumulative error rate. So when you do one single event, a small error is fine. You're gonna get more or less same answer. You do it over time as a continuous measurement, you sum it up, and that becomes a big problem.
Right, because and I mean, anytime you have something, if you have something big enough, even a small rate of error is going to be big. So, like if there's a 1% rate of error, if you do something a billion times, that's still 10 million errors, kind of thing. Is that?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So again, it's not rocket science. It just take some little bit knowledge, and you just know how to explain it, and to say in a confident way. I think some scientists in the public they're doing really well, like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil, yeah.
And he's really good at this. He think about different time scale, break things down really, really well. So he's one great example of thinking about in different scale things. And then he has great confidence in himself, and he doesn't afraid to show his emotion.
Yeah, well, and emotion is a huge role in engaging an audience, right? So like going a bit back from science and more into the speaking side, which I'm more comfortable with, if you will, the idea of using emotion in speaking is hugely important, right? And you tend to see that the reason a lot of famous speeches are famous is because they evoke an emotional response.
Yeah.
Right? So you look at any really famous speech, you get the Winston Churchill's Never Retreat, we will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them in the trenches thing. It evokes this feeling of like, it's an inspirational speech. It evokes this feeling of tenacity and perseverance despite overwhelming odds, right? You look at Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream. It's hopeful. It's rebellious. It makes you feel something, right? You start looking at any really successful speech in terms of Toastmasters or in terms of TED Talks. There's generally an emotional component there that maybe it's a positive emotion making people laugh, maybe it's emotion of making people cry, maybe it's emotion of making them laugh so hard they cry, right? Whatever it is, there's a variety of emotions that once you evoke them, that's when you get that's when the speech almost becomes like, I don't even know what a good phrase for it is, but like it becomes more than just a simple act of speaking to people. It becomes iconic, I guess would be something like that, because anytime someone hears that speech, they have that emotional reaction, and it gives them that kick of emotion where they go like, yes. And like if everyone feels something when they see it, they're going to share it with their friends, say, wow, this made me really angry. And then if we're angry, of course we share it with all of our friends, because if I'm angry, there's one thing I want everyone around me to be angry for some reason. So we all want that. Everyone's angry then, and then they share it with their friends, right? It's that idea of like, you know how if someone, like if you're living with someone and they forget to wash something for a couple weeks and it starts to smell bad and they say like, oh my God, smell this. What do? You go, okay, you smell it too. Everyone does that. And it's the same thing with emotion. This made me feel this thing. Smell this.
Feel the same.
Yeah, feel with me, right? So it's that same phenomena of I feel disgusted because this thing smells awful. Here you go. And if you can evoke emotion in speaking, you get that. You can have that same impact of it becoming viral. But and that's off topic about how it spreads. But more importantly, when you get that emotional response from people, that's when you get a connection with people. That's when you get a reaction from people.
Right.
I've seen way too many interesting ideas die because they were delivered without emotion connected to them. And if you want to, like when you go back to Muhammad Khatami's speech where he's talking about the scientists on the stage or on TV who's communicating these right? I think the biggest challenge, aside from like the confidence thing we talked about, the biggest challenge for a lot of people connecting with science is there's no emotion, there's no connectivity, there's nothing human about it, right? If you start reading to me numbers and data and saying our projections are in 20 years we're going to see this, that's not emotional. If you tell me, like you said before, 1.5 degrees by 2050, increased average, okay, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Nice, right? Good.
Don't know what it means for you.
Like, I like warm summers. Like, that's what that
like
means.
warmer winter in Canada.
Yeah, like, oh man, I don't like 20 below. I think, what would that? I think 18.5 below is better than 20 below, right? So, like, it doesn't mean anything until you connect an emotional story and you say, okay, so I knew this guy. He was living in, I don't know, where's a place that's really low. He was living in, I think Micronesia is really like low water level. He was living there and he had a house built. He had his dream home built. And when the temperature went up 0.1 degrees, it destroyed his home because the water rose and flooded his home and it made it go into unstable ground. So he had to destroy his dream home. Oh, that's a human story. There's emotion there, disappointment, sadness of there was this high of the dream home. And that wasn't a very well delivered story. But the idea is there's this high point of emotion. He's got this dream home. And then you're dropping my emotion to say this is a problem. And then you say that was 0.1 degree increase, 1.5. And then think of how many dream homes go down, right? And that's more emotionally real. And I know that example doesn't exist, and we're using it technically a politically and emotionally charged.
You're demonstrating the word of power, so power of the words.
Yeah, right. And it's probably working against us that we're talking about something like climate change because there are people who already have existing views, right? And then there's already emotion there, which is generally really politically connected, where people are going to say you're wrong or you're right, and they already have their beliefs. But if you talk about something that's more apolitical, like, I don't know, with you're studying how to make fish healthier, right?
That can get political, believe me.
Oh, of course.
It's crazy. I don't know it's crazy, but it does get political.
I mean, everything can be political, and I'm sure there are people like you get arguments about whether we should farm fish or whether we should have them caught wild and where we should farm and all that stuff, which is fair. But I'm guessing it's a little less political than climate change.
Yes.
I would argue, but
it's pretty local scale, right? Only in the people in the postcode area.
Yeah, a little smaller. If we
much.
And I think that even still, if you communicate to me that, like, if you start giving me salmon population numbers, you say like there are only 15,000 salmon left in this area, and I'm like, okay,
still a lot.
Good. That sounds like a big number. I couldn't eat 15,000 fish, so right. But if you start connecting emotion to that, then I'm much more likely to engage with it and kind of go along with what you're saying. So I think emotion is a critical part. And I went on a massive tangent there. I was not nearly focused enough. But
no, it's okay. I think the first step to showing your emotion is to being confident in yourself.
Oh, of course.
If the speaker is not sure about himself, there's no way any emotion can be delivered.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about here is how we can use confidence in different way. We can use confidence to persuade people to give them a persuasive fact, or we can use the confidence to influence people emotionally, hopefully for the good reason. Influence people emotionally.
Yes.
Because there's a borderline of manipulating people's mind. If you have to do it for the good reason.
And even looking at it without talking about the idea of manipulating people. Using emotions in a sense, and emotion can be a really scary thing for people, right? Like speaking with emotion or showing emotions can be really scary for people. So I think it's important for people to build that confidence first, right? Like to learn what it is to speak confidently, to learn that when it comes to speaking confidently, it's not just about it's not just about whether I believe in myself or not. It's about how I stand. It's about how I speak. If I speak with a clear, loud voice, I sound more confident, right? If I know the mechanics of how I speak, it's easy for me to sound more confident, even if I feel awful. If I feel like I'm the worst garbage on the planet, I know if I stand, well, first of all, right now I'm sitting, but if I sit with my shoulders back, chin up, and then I speak nice and loud, and I enunciate my words and I make sure they're clear, I sound more confident. It's not like, do I feel any different than I did 15 seconds ago? No. Well, I mean, you could argue that there's a feedback loop in the body that makes me feel more confident by acting more confident, but that's not the point. The idea is, if I know the mechanics of it, if you know how to demonstrate it, then you sound more confident, and then you will probably start to feel more confident because of it. And then from there, once you know how to be more confident, once you know how to act that way, it kind of opens the floodgates for how I can start adding things like emotion in, so I can present emotion confidently. So even if I'm talking about being terrified, I can talk about being terrified like I sound so scared, like I get close to the microphone, right? I can make myself smaller, right? And I present this way. But then I can come back to this idea of discussing the fear, and I can go back to that scared place. And then I can bounce between that, for it's the demonstration of the emotion that requires confidence in myself and knowing how to present it. But anyway.
Yeah, it is good. I think we cover a lot of ground here about what a confidence is in a speech and what you can do for different type of purpose of speech. And we even touch on emotion. I think we can discuss emotion in much in depth in a different way. I think it is spend weeks. I think it's a good place to wrap up this kind of general discussion about the confidence. And now we will go into some video analysis. We're gonna do some clip, and we're gonna talk about exactly how this speaker, like we summarized at the beginning, when the Bill Gates delivered his speech, how Donald Trump did it, and how Las Vegas mayor want to show Anderson Cooper and their correspondent back and forth. And it was a Toastmaster champion speech, and we're going to analyze in the clip. I think if listeners want to listen to this, they can check our YouTube channel for this more in-depth detailed analysis. So this is a kind of a podcast just to say hi and to tell people what's this general framework we're thinking about, we want to work on. And I think that's a great session to wrap up for this first episode.
Sounds good.
Sounds good for you?
Yeah. I'll stop the recording here.